Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Carter with SpartanTec, and today I have James Manning with Panda joining me, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Panda security solution. Just to tell you a little bit about who we both are, James Manning is a pre-sales engineer for Panda Security. He spent the last 9 years working for Panda as a pre-sales engineer in North America. This experience, combined with his prior stints as a threat researcher and analyst, gave him first-hand knowledge of the threat landscape. He's passionate about tech, and he loves to work with customers to solve their most complex IT challenges. So we're very pleased to have him with us today. And just a little bit about me. I'm the founder of SpartanTec, and we do IT security solutions across North and South Carolina. And I've been in IT for over 20 years and have definitely enjoyed working in IT. It's been very interesting over the past few years to see all the changes that have taken place. So look forward to you getting a lot of information today out of our presentation. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to James for him to get started so that we can wrap this up in the 30-minute time slot that we had told you we would do this today. Any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and look forward to talking to you as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you, everybody, for attending today. So we have kind of a timely topic to go over. A lot of changes have taken place with the recent epidemic that's been hitting everybody that's caused us to really sort of adapt and move quickly and make a lot of rapid changes. So what we're going to be looking at today is sort of how those changes have progressed, where they found us, how we handled them, and some of the things that we're going to have to worry about as time continues on. Enough time has lapsed now that what we're seeing is there's been some organizations that have been able to take the time to actually, send out surveys and things of that nature to just really sort of get a feel for what people's experience has been. And I think it's a really good way to sort of look at the situation now. So what we've done is we're going to utilize one from ThreatPost, which is a security website that's out there pretty well known. A really good survey with some really good information in that. So we're going to sort of lean on that survey today and talk about some of the things that they have found. We're going to tie that back into what that means for you and kind of some of the trends that we've seen that tie into that survey. And we're going to try to take a little bit of an attempt to offer a little bit of strategy for you, just some tips that you can sort of use to move forward, some of the things you want to keep in mind. A lot of times you make these fast, quick decisions and things tend to get forgotten along the way. So you want to make sure you're able to plug those holes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. And one of the telling things that we found in the survey is what you see here. So one of the things that we're going to utilize today is a survey that was put out by ThreatPost. And so what we're seeing is several of these surveys have been conducted recently that really kind of give us a good idea of where these things found us. ThreatPost is a well-known website that pushes out to a lot of their readers and got back some interesting responses. So we'll start with this first comment here. And it's pretty interesting. It says, in a survey of more than 200 readers, half of those readers said that their organizations are mostly prepared, but they all pretty much still have groups of employees that represent challenges in the work from home space. If we dig a little deeper into that, we see that only 30% said that they feel fully prepared to move to all remote working. So I think something important to take away from this is that if you feel like you're a little bit behind, you're kind of caught unawares, know here that from what ThreatPost is finding, that roughly 70% of people feel the same way. There's only 30% of us out there that were ready to go when this hit. So as we look a little bit deeper into some of these statistics, 13% said they are only ready to move a minority of workforce and students to online platforms, or 70%, as we saw in the first slide, enabling remote working is fairly new. So I found that a little bit interesting because not only were they not prepared, but just the fact of enabling remote work was a fairly new process for them. So they may not have even had anything in place to push this out the door with. A third of the respondents said that less than 20% of their user bases telecommuted before COVID-19 social distancing started. And another 11% said only road warriors worked remotely. Well, what we see here in this very short amount of time, and by the end of the week from this, when the survey was taken, roughly 81% said that at least 50% of their workers will be work from home. So we went from somewhere around 20%, in a lot of cases 30%, and moved that up to at least 50% in a week's time. So that's a lot of scrambling, a lot of hardware provision, a lot of throwing stuff out there to get it going. Sort of a natural evolution of things here as we move people out into this remote sort of work environment is the next steps in this survey. 40% of people said that they're already seeing more attacks on their remote footprint, and 10% seeing an uptick in the very specific coronavirus-themed scams. So if we kind of bundle this together, we have administrators that are trying to up the number of their workforce by potentially 80% as far as who's working outside of the corporate offices. And at the same time, you know, in their peripheral vision, they've got this other concern that they need to keep an eye on, which is an increase of attacks on the remote footprint, but also very specific coronavirus-themed scams, which are very relevant because at this day and age or in this time, people are very keyed in on any news related to what's going on. So the tendency there is going to be a little bit higher for them to click around on things and try to get a little bit more information. And then finally, whether security teams had an emergency plan in place to shift to an on-premise workforce to one that is remote, 47% said they did not. This wasn't incredibly surprising to me. I don't think there are a lot of organizations out there, unless you're just a massive, huge organization, that have planned to the extent of an epidemic or a pandemic causing you to move everybody to a remote workforce. A lot of the other things, you know, being able to back up your files and recover from those, power outages, or, you know, hurricanes, that kind of stuff, depending on your area. But this sort of an event was not really one that was considered by a lot of people. So we get a good picture of kind of what the landscape is. How has everybody been caught in this current events? What are they prepared to do? Now, as we start shifting into that remote workforce, what are some of the concerns? This is going to be a natural thought process that takes place. So 43% said that end-user security awareness was the top challenge. There's something unsaid in this percentage, in this top challenge here. We have admins that are concerned about security awareness. That means we don't want our users clicking on emails and executing malware or ransomware, something along those lines, and infecting devices. Behind that is implied that there may be concern on their ends that their solutions may not necessarily be up to the task to block unknown stuff, to be able to handle with that kind of behavior by their end users as well. So that's interesting. It's something we're going to come back to a little bit later. 20%, their concern was housing sensitive data off-premise and transmitting it via the open internet. The housing sensitive data side is pretty easy to overcome, but the transmission is definitely going to be tricky, so this is a logical concern. The next one was a bit concerning for me. Only 10% said that patching and updating was a concern. We'll get into that a little bit more. 9% said lack of footprint visibility, and 6.5% for mobile security. So patching and updating and lack of footprint visibility I found to be interesting. That's essentially knowing where your devices are and that they are updated and have all their holes patched. So what are some of the challenges? You know, obviously one of the big challenges was getting everybody into that remote role. We see there's already some concern there about being able to secure these devices, at least a little bit of a worry about what will happen if certain activities take place. So at the root of it, the main challenge is going to be maintaining your security posture from our perspective. Obviously, the main goal is to keep the business up, keep the business running, allowing people to do what it is that they need to do to complete their job functions. But in that, part of that problem is maintaining the security posture. If you get a remote device out there and it gets compromised, the user's not able to work, those sorts of things, that becomes a huge issue. And obviously there is a lot of moving pieces in this puzzle as far as maintaining your security posture. But we're going to focus on sort of a microcosm today. And that microcosm is the endpoint. Because if you truly think about it, in this environment where you have people working from home in a remote role, you're not necessarily worried about people hammering away at your firewall or in a P server or something along those lines. Your end users that are working from home are going to become prime target, where the security overall is going to be a little bit more lax. So you want to make sure that what's on those devices is secure. And I think it helps us to look at the situation as far as what has taken place from the prism of the CIA triad. This is kind of a hallmark of security, and CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We want to make sure that no unauthorized people are able to access data that they shouldn't. No unauthorized people are able to modify data that they shouldn't. And whatever data or resources that a user needs to complete their job, they are able to access. So I think what has happened in this recent event is that naturally there was this large focus on the availability side. We need to get people out there, make sure that they can access the resources that they need, and do their jobs so the business can keep going. And what's happening now is something that I like to term security backfill. We've got everybody out there in place and they're working. Now we need to worry about the security side of the picture. So sort of a deploy now, secure later approach to things. And what we see comes into that as far as challenges are concerned is BYOD, on-premise solutions, and administered solutions. So BYOD, obviously, that's always been a perennial challenge in this space. How are we going to secure somebody's device when they bring it in, they want to use it instead of a company laptop? There's a fine line there between what we can control and what we can install on the device. Also on-premise solutions. And by these, I'm talking about something where you're actually installing a management server internally. You're typically on the LAN managing that solution. Your devices are on the LAN. They're updating from that solution as well. And then we look at administered solutions. And by that, I mean you have a product in place. Maybe it's even cloud-based, but it requires a lot of admin overhead. You're going to get alerts saying, hey, we've kind of flagged something here that you may want to take a look at, and let us know what you want to do. All of these are going to present their own challenges. So some of these are going to be manifested in the area of ensuring updates and upgrades. So if you're using an on-premise solution that normally updates through the LAN, well, all of your devices have now moved outside of that LAN. They're using their own connections. They're on their own networks. If you don't have a way for them to update over the internet, are their signatures or other technologies going to be kept up to date? And if not, you're essentially day by day increasing the attack footprint of that device. They're going to become more and more vulnerable over time if they're not connecting in somehow to maintain that. Also upgrades. Let's say your chosen product has a critical vulnerability that's discovered in it. Can those remote devices easily upgrade from the internet? If not, again, your attack surface or your attack footprint has just increased. Then we get into the administered solution side, and some of the prime things here are going to be timely intervention response. So if your endpoints are flagging something on their devices as suspicious, and it's not able to send that information in to an on-premise solution, you're not going to be aware of it. Or if it does make it to your solution, say if it's cloud-based, how difficult is it for you to respond to that event? Is this something where you have to establish a connection from console to connection to device? How difficult is that going to be for you as far as coordinating with the end user? Are you even there, or are you walking around out in the backyard kicking rocks because you're going crazy from being locked down? Are you going to be able to get to that user? Are you going to be able to establish connectivity? Do you know what is between you and them? And what does that downtime look like for you? How long are you going to need on that remote device to be able to troubleshoot this incident? And if we think about it, we start to sort of multiply that picture. You know, we're talking about one situation, but if you start seeing these alerts in other areas with multiple users, how much of this time is going to take away from other administrative tasks that you have to do throughout the day? So you start to see the picture of these kinds of solutions, these approaches being a little bit more difficult, more onerous to manage. Next, what about lost or stolen devices? We saw that one of the concerns was securing data, but also transmitting it. If somebody has a work laptop at home, maybe they don't have Wi-Fi. They're going out and sitting outside the parking lot at Starbucks or something like that. If their device gets lost or stolen somewhere with personal data on it, what do you have in place to be able to secure that data? And then patching. So your devices are outside the LAN. If they were previously using a WSUS server or something similar, are they still going to be able to receive their updates? What about for third-party applications? Are they going to be able to plug those holes? Because remember, your remote users are now a prime target. And if you think this is not an issue, and this is why I was saying I was going to come back to this when it said only 10% of people had this as a prime concern. If you think this is not an issue, ask Target. During the Target compromise, they didn't get compromised directly. An HVAC vendor had their devices compromised. They brought them in, plugged into the Target network to manage the HVAC system, and then the compromise spread. They were able to get onto the POS systems and scrape all the credit card data from memory. So absolutely something you need to be concerned about. So now that we kind of see where everybody's concerns are, what some of the challenges have been, what you need to be thinking about, what easy, kind of quick, simple steps can you take to overcome these? And I like to call this section the Emergency War Powers Act. What you need to try to do is to implement and work to enforce new policies or old policies that you just haven't been able to really put force behind. And you need to consider this even with BYOD. There's a couple of ways to do this. Obviously, NAC enforced. So if you have a network access control solution, it'll be a little bit easier for you to implement. If you got a lot of time on your hands, look at something like OpenNAC, which is going to be open source, community driven. To be able to have a solution in place. The other is going to be honor enforced, and this is going to depend a lot on your users. And you want to focus on a couple of different areas. You want to have that remote management solution, maybe a little bit of monitoring in there. And absolutely, given the current times that we're in, you want something more advanced than just signature-driven protection. So start focusing on that EDR piece. And as to that, ThreatPost actually had a little bit to say about this as well. If we look down here towards the bottom, it says one reader found it's now easier to force compliance as a contingency of being able to connect, and others are saying that they've been able to push through changes in cyber improvements that they found resistance to before. Now, we're not saying that you go in with a heavy hand and say you're going to take this and like it. That's not the idea. But what you need to do is you need to approach your end users with the fact that they are going to become more attractive targets as a result of this. And you're not just concerned about protecting the company data, you're also concerned about them. Because if an attacker is able to get on the device, all their data is going to be there. If they're logging into their Facebook, their Twitter, their bank accounts, all this other stuff, and they're sitting there scraping data off of the device, they're going to get all that information as well. So there's the odds there that not only will they compromise company information, you get access to your bank accounts and drain that, drop crypto miners on the machine, all kinds of different scenarios that could affect the user. It was always an issue, but now that they essentially have the company data in their hands at their home, it's more so. And one interesting implementation fact is deployment for this is going to be a lot easier since most BYD owners are going to be local admins on their own machine. So now, really quickly, we'll talk about benefits from the Panda side, and we really just sort of want to use this as a template to understand what we envision as sort of the ideal situation, considering all the challenges that we talked about previously. And the idea here is simplicity. We went through a big rebranding thing several years ago, and they came up with the term simplexity. And it was kind of two terms joined together. The idea was we make the complex simple. And simplicity needs to be sort of one of your focuses. You're going to have a lot of challenges to deal with. You don't need complex solutions that are going to be chewing away at your time. You need to start reserving that time for other things. So with the Panda solutions, and we'll see this shortly, ease of administration. Very simple to access the console, very intuitive to manage. You're not going to lose a lot of time trying to figure out what settings or tweaks or knobs or buttons mean. It's going to be easy and understandable. Ideal for remote situations. Also, the protection model. Just by design, this is one that does not introduce administrator overhead. So everything that we send you is going to be definitive. We're going to send you alerts that are basically saying, hey, we saw this in the environment. We already took care of it. No need to worry. Here's the information. You're not going to have to worry about validating suspicious files or eliminating suspicious files or rolling back changes or anything like that. We take that burden off your shoulders. Additionally, it's flexible. So if you're in a situation where you have a solution in place that you can't really move from, but you want to augment it, you like what you're hearing, we make it easy to do so. We can layer our solutions in with anything that you have to cover them. So ideal for your BYOD or critical infrastructure. If you're not able to get in and out of the office, this is something you can layer in there to add that peace of mind. Also, single pane of glass. We're getting multiple functionalities in one console, so we're able to stay on top of patches while your workers are remote. Their location means nothing. As long as they get that internet connection, they'll be able to get their updates. No WSS servers or anything like that that you have to deal with. And then we can also secure that remote device data at rest. So we do provide full disk encryption with BitLocker. So as you can see, this sort of combination creates an ideal solution, simplicity, ease of use for you. And with that, we are going to shift over here to a quick demo of the product, and we want to focus on some of the key areas that we mentioned in the presentation. So number one overall is ease of administration. What we're looking at here is actually the Adaptive Defense 360 console. And ease of administration comes in the fact that we don't care where you are. There's no management servers that you have to deal with. If you have an internet connection and you have a browser, you're going to be able to get in and manage all of your dispersed devices easily and quickly. Same thing for the devices. We don't care that they're not on the local network. As long as they get internet connection, we'll be able to send them updates, upgrades, configuration changes. They'll be able to feed back into us. We can see how that they're doing as well. As we move down, we talked a little bit about admin overhead when it comes to notifications and alerts. You're never going to see a situation in this console or with this product that says, you know, we've watched this file, it's a little bit suspicious, we flagged it for you, can you provide us some feedback and let us know what to do? Absolutely not. What we're going to do is send you a list of alerts that says, hey, this is a file that we saw in the environment, we've already taken care of it for you, and blocked it from running. There's nothing further that you need to do at this point. So very easy to manage from that perspective. You're not going to have to worry about getting a late alert, being able to quickly hop into the console and try to manage that situation. It's all kind of taken care of for you. Also, we talked a little bit about the data at rest. This is very important. If somebody does set that laptop down and you know, they go for a walk or they go somewhere else and a malicious actor happens to see it, they grab it, they run off with it. With the full disk encryption here with BitLocker, they're not going to be able to access the data on that device. So whether or not it's being careless or inattentive, you don't have to worry about your end users securely managing that device. If it gets away from them, you'll be able to lock that down and take control of it here. The other nice thing from here, when we take a look at the encryption, this is historically one of the pain points when it comes to managing BitLocker. We are going to capture the recovery key for devices here inside of the console. So even if you have a user that calls and says, I don't know what happened, but I booted up and I'm in this recovery mode, you can say, write this number down, here's your recovery key, you can get back in. So easy management from here. You don't have to worry about driving over to where they are or them driving back to you to fix it. And the other side of that is, like I said, the patch management. This is often overlooked, but we can't stress it enough. Essentially, vulnerable applications are open doors on your systems. A lot of these vulnerabilities are going to have exploits tied to them. And if this door is open, they're absolutely going to find it, and they're going to use it to try to further compromise the device. So the approach that we take is, number one, in showing you vulnerable applications that you currently have in your environment. So you can take steps to remediate those. We're also going to list out all the available patches in your environment. We make it very easy to come in and to select all the relevant devices that have the same patch. So you can quickly and easily push these out to all of your remote users. And you can also automate this process as well. So as we come in and we just set up a simple task that says, I want to go through and install patches, I can do this every week, every day, or every month if I choose. And you can see the vendors of the third-party applications that are listed here. So not only are we covering Windows, which is important, but these applications, which are going to be commonly targeted for exploitation, we're going to take care of these for you as well. And it just goes on. So as you can see, looking at this task, the process is really simple. It's really intuitive. We're just coming through and choosing a day and time for when we want to push this out. The consoles themselves, the status dashboards are very intuitive, very clear, make it easy to come in and understand what is going on inside of your environment as well. So with that, we will return back to the presentation and just a couple of points in summary that I'll mention. We want to be able to focus on simplicity and spending a little bit of time on the things that are what are really important for us. We want to sort of start to try to preserve some of our own time for other things that may pop up. We're in a completely different operating role now, so we need to maintain that flexibility in there. So you want to put your eyes on a solution that's going to cover as many bases as possible and do it in the simplest manner possible as well. And with that, we will open the floor to any questions that may have arisen.
If anyone has any questions after the presentation today, feel free to reach us at the office at 843-418-4792, and we look forward to the opportunity to work with you as we go forward. Have a great afternoon.